There's nothing Paul likes as much as receiving feedback about the Joy of Cruising podcast. You can now send him feedback via the message link on each episode. He can't respond, but he may read your text on air. Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. And this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome Flavia Gray, creator of Ships in Champagne, a luxury cruise and lifestyle blog. I wrote about Flavia's story in my first cruising book, The Joy of Cruising, in a section called The Influencers, which focuses on individuals like Flavia who epitomize what the joy of cruising is all about. Individuals moved by their passion for cruising who choose to manifest that passion in an engaging way when not sailing. Flavia hails from the UK. As you've likely heard me point out before, fully a third of the passionate cruisers profiled in the Joy of Cruising were from UK, and that proportion has held up through the subsequent books, Cruising Interrupted and The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as guests on the Joy of Cruising podcast. I feel a connection with my friends from UK, and I hope to meet a few of them when I finally cruise out of Southampton in 2025. What's different about Flavia is, unlike my other UK friends whom I have interacted with via email, Zoom, or Skype, I have met Flavia in person twice in Florida on visits she made to see friends in the U.S. Flavia was one of the first passenger cruisers, UK or elsewhere in the world, to agree to be in the Joy of Cruising. I vividly remember writing her feature with a great deal of assistance from Flavia, with a smile on my face, as it was my first foray into sort of travel writing. Flavia's feature in the Joy of Cruising, Ships in Champagne, was at times quite poignant. A single mother of two saw her singing hobby turn into a full-time career, singing in bands, performing at weddings, pubs, and clubs. Though Flavia was quite good at her craft, it was not going to provide enough of a reliably constant income. This need led her to a position with Royal Caribbean as a cruise specialist, telephone sales. Flavia progressed in her career and went on to create an award-winning blog, Ships in Champagne, named a top 50 cruise blogger and nominated for UK's Wave Award in 2017 and 2018. Flavia loves cruising and remains a cruiser at heart, but for a time shifted away from the sea to the air. She started a new travel career as a flight attendant. Flavia does, however, long to cruise again, and we ask her about her new career and future cruise plans. Welcome, Flavia, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you, Paul. It's lovely to be here.
So good to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. We're getting there. So, things are good. Things are interesting. My life is always an interesting journey, and that's the way it's been. Good. Could definitely do with improvement. Let's put it that way.
Say hi to Josh for me. For the listeners, Cheryl and I met Flavia's son, Josh, when they traveled to Florida to see some friends, and we were living in Florida. But before we discuss Ships in Champagne and your entree into the cruising industry, tell our listeners about yourself, where you're from, where you live, your background, anything that you would like to share.
Okay, well, I am a single parent. I've done that twice now, and I live in Surrey in England, which is a great location for Heathrow and Southampton. So it's a real good hub.
Now, Flavia, if I can jump in,
yeah, sure.
How close is that to Southampton?
It's about maybe an hour's drive.
Oh, okay. Well,
easy drive.
Cheryl and I are cruising for the first time out of Southampton. It's not until next year, but I certainly hope to get a chance, I'm sure we'll stay a couple of days in London and maybe a couple of days in Southampton. I'm not sure, but I'd sure like to see some of my UK friends. You know, as you probably know, you know, in the 3 books, probably a third of the passenger cruises I featured were from the UK, or at least international, but mostly UK. So, you know, I sure would like to see a few my virtual friends. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you'll probably be flying into Heathrow anyway, won't you?
yeah, although this is funny. You know, I kind of have hinted to Cheryl. You know, we're flying to Heathrow for the cruise, but wouldn't it be nice to find a transatlantic coming back? Because what I'm finding is the international airfares are absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I suggested that, you know, Cheryl was like, are you trying to sneak in a cruise? Yes, I was.
Well, there's a lot of positives about doing that. I mean, you know, you're talking about spending probably the same amount of money
Yep.
on a 14-day cruise with accommodation and food and entertainment in a lovely room
Yeah.
compared to sitting in a tiny little seat for 8 hours. You know, well, you know which side of the coin I'm on.
Well, I've got some time. It's not until the fall of 25, but you know, I'm going to work on that, and then I'm going to reapproach her with all of my, you know, every I dotted, every T crossed, and I'm pretty sure, as you just suggested, that the airfare is going to be comparable to the cruise fare, and you know, they're not feeding you.
Next year, 2025, the Independence of the Seas is back into Southampton, which is our much loved Royal Caribbean cruise ship here. And she's welcome back, even though we've had Anthem for a few years. Indy, as we call her, is a firm favourite here. So she'll be going back transatlantic. So you might even get a chance to go on Indy.
Yeah, that would be wonderful because, as you know, I profiled Elizabeth, the godmother of Indy, in the first book, and she's also been on the podcast. So that would kind of that would kind of wrap, make that full circle. I actually had booked a cruise on Indy with my grandkids, and the whole idea was they were going to take a photo standing next to Elizabeth's portrait. Unfortunately, it was booked, in conjunction with, right before the pandemic. And so we lost so many cruises. Everyone did during the pandemic. I think I interrupted you, though. You were giving us your background, and
that's okay.
And I interrupted to ask how close Surrey was to Southampton.
No problem at all. So so I've born in London, raised in Surrey, single parent. My daughter's 24 and she's now flown the nest. And my son is 10, and so it's just the two of us and the dog at home. My background is very varied, and it ranges from working in an office to survive to singing because I love it, and I've sung in various venues. Never on cruise ships. People always think, having worked for Royal Caribbean, I was a singer, but that would be a dream. That would be a dream job for me. So never say it's never too late. But singing in pubs and clubs, and then I did fly for a while. Then I did some more office work, and I ended up in Royal Caribbean. So that's where my love for cruising came in. And had a wide, varied background.
Share with us that poignant story of your transition from singing with the band to the start of your cruise career at Royal.
Okay, well, I was, as I said, I was singing. I was doing, it was Christmas time. I was doing some singing, and a friend, shall we say, in inverted commas, said to me, why don't you get a real job? Now, I don't think it was a reflection necessarily on my singing, but I was only doing local part-time sort of thing. It wasn't full-time. And he said, get a proper job. So I thought, well, this guy was quite successful in his own right. So it's always very good to listen to advice from people who are doing better than you, I think. So I applied to some local agencies, and they came up with this job for Royal Caribbean, which I just thought, I've always loved travel. Travel has always been a passion of mine, but I was very much a flyer and a beach person. And the idea of cruising to me just horrified me. I just had this vision of it being full of old people and just like a floating old people's home. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I didn't feel that it would probably be for me. So I went along to for the audition, for the interview, just because it was ridiculous not to. I had no other option. And walking in sort of reluctantly, and somebody overtook me walking in, and he was in jeans and a t-shirt, and I thought, oh, this is not going to be for me, because look at the state of these people. Now, don't get me wrong, this is going back, where were we? 2010. So it was 14 years ago. So the person that I was then is not the judgmental person I was then is not the person I am now. But I was a bit like, oh, what's this all about? So went in, and then it turned out that it wasn't an interview. It was more like an assessment day. So there was loads of us, and I just thought, oh, this is even worse. It's getting worse by the minute. So I went in and sat down, and we had to do like an aptitude test and stuff like that. A real mix of people in there. In fact, I'm still in touch with a girl who was in that room at the time. Now she didn't get the job, but she came back later, and they played this video. And the video was actually, I think it was probably Independence of the Seas or Liberty of the Seas or something like that. And they just showed this incredible footage, obviously the music, and there was like the rock wall, the pools, the ice skating, just everything, kids running around having fun. And that was, I literally just blew my mind.
There goes your preconception about it being like a nursing home.
Absolutely. And like I said, it just blew my mind. And I thought, I've got to get on that ship. I think because also I'd had beach holidays in the past and realised that because then my son wasn't born. In fact, my son wouldn't have been born had I not worked for Royal Caribbean. So that was another thing that came out of it. But so my daughter and I had tried to go on beach holidays, because she was little. I couldn't go to the beach, sit down, chill out, because I had to watch her all the time. But I thought, looking at this ship, and they had the kids clubs. The kids clubs looked amazing. I thought, this is going to be great. It's going to be absolutely fantastic for us. And then obviously the price tag was just not for a single parent. I thought that it's not going to have. The only way I'm going to be able to get on this ship is if I get a job for the company, because they had mentioned something about relatively free cruises or standby cruises or something. And I thought, this is definitely, I've got to do this. So I changed from thinking, get me out of here, to please, please, please give me a job. So yeah.
So what happened next? When did you find out?
I don't know how long it was. It wasn't that long. It was within the week. But so you have the aptitude test all together in a room with written on the paper, and then we would go out. There was about 4 or 5 different management from Royal Caribbean that were doing one-to-one interviews, so they could get through us quickly. So I went into a room, and I remember Jana was the one that interviewed me. If she's listened to this podcast, Jana, thank you so much. She still works she works at Celebrity Cruises. She's an absolute legend. Anybody that's worked there in the UK knows her, so a big shout out.
What's her name?
Jana Thompson. So she'll have to listen to this now I've mentioned her name.
Jana, I sure hope you are listening. If you are, hi. and thank you for springing Flavia on the world. I have to say, I've written about over 50, I'd say, well, I don't know, 55, 40, it just may be 50 passionate cruisers from the UK. And Flavia, only one that I have seen in the United States twice. So thank you. And I hope this reaches you.
Yeah, so there we go. So that was my introduction basically into cruising, and 6 weeks of intense training before we got on the phones. We had to learn about all the ships. We had to learn about Royal Caribbean Celebrity. They had Azamara cruises then. So we had to learn I think we did Azamara in a day. There was 2 ships, but with Royal Caribbean, and we had a ship visit, and that was on Independence of the Seas. I remember that, going on board. Oh my goodness, for the first time. I mean, we didn't leave. Obviously, we didn't go anywhere. We just got on and had a look round. But
So you're working in this phone center, and you are selling cruises, and you had never been on a cruise ship.
well, apart from that day that I'd been on Independence of the Seas,
What was that like, that ship tour?
well, it was a lot.
For a single mother who never dreamed that she'd be on one of those ships.
It was, they used to use this. Royal Caribbean used to have this catchphrase. What was it? The nation of wow, or the wow? I can't remember what it was. Wow is their kind of thing, and it is. I mean, that's literally it is. It takes your breath away. You just cannot believe you're in this. You're in this amazing vessel. You don't even feel like you're on a ship. It's like a beautiful resort with lovely views, not necessarily in Southampton, but you kind of get the feel for it. I mean, you do, even when you step on board, you feel like you've stepped into the Caribbean because of the whole vibe of the place. So it was just huge. We walked on, we were straight on the Royal Promenade, and it was just exciting, and no one could believe it. And actually don't think we hadn't passed the final exam at that point. So it was kind of like saying, this is what you might get.
Okay, so you weren't an official employee yet.
Well, I was in training. So you were employed for training.
Okay.
You have to pass the exam at the end in order to actually get it. And, I think everyone always thinks you're going to be the idiot that doesn't pass it, So it's, I never sort of relax until I know 100% that I've got it. And looking at it, it was just like, is this really going to be something that's open to me? Am I actually going to be able to get on this ship? And then we had lunch. I mean, the food, the food pool is incredible. We had
you had lunch on the ship.
Oh, yes. We had 3-course meal in the main dining room. And I walked in the main dining room, and it was just incredible. You've got the huge chandelier, and it's 3 stories high, and the waiters, you just feel like you're in some Michelin star restaurant up in London. It's just it's opulent, but it's relaxed. And that's what I think. The very few times that I've gone to a really nice restaurant, you do notice that the staff they have this way about them that they it's like they've got you. They're like, don't worry, I've got you. They're calm, but they're efficient, and you feel special. And it's just, I always kind of fall in love with the waiters, if you like, because they've just got this way about them. They're just so charming and so lovely and so smiley, and they just look after you, and they make you feel so welcome.
So how long was it before you got on a ship and it moved?
It was about 6 months after that. So you start off in, so then what happened with me, this is just a kind of a theme in my life. It's a weird one, really. I just broke all the rules, not intentionally, but you start in trade sales. So that means they'll only let you loose on a travel agent. So the travel agents that phone in are trying to get information for their customers. So they don't actually let you talk to a customer, because you could absolutely ruin everything. You can talk to a travel agent. So that's where you start. So because travel agents have so many different things to deal with, they can't expect to be cruise experts. So that's what we're there for. You to phone into the call center and ask us for our, so that they could give a good service to the customer. So the couple of rules that they had in place at the time was everyone had the opportunity to get what they called a FAM cruise, the familiarization cruise, but you had to have been there for 6 months. And the other thing is to go into direct sales, which is when you'd actually speak to a customer calling in directly to Royal Caribbean. You had to be there for 6 months. That was classed as a promotion. Well, I got both in 5 months. So it was great, but you get a lot of animosity towards you in the department when you're getting things that are breaking the rules, which I totally understand. When people have worked hard and they've been there for more than 6 months, and then someone else comes along and they've only been there 5 months, and they get a familiarization cruise that means flying out to Palma and going on I think it was 3 nights out in the Mediterranean.
Well, now, to be fair, you weren't breaking any rules, right? They sent you on that. So isn't that an award?
Yeah, it is. And it wasn't my fault that they did that. And they did that based on the fact my team leader thought that that would be the best investment for Royal Caribbean. So that's what they do. They think, well, we've got a budget here. When they put people on a cruise, they have to pay for that person. It's not free. It's free for the person, but they have a budget that has to go from A to B, where that is accounted for. So, you know, they can't just go, yeah, have a free cabin, it's empty. It all has to be, you know, it's like stock check, you know, what happened with this cabin and where's the money? So they have to validate spending that budget on that person. So when it comes to, right, we've got a cruise going and we need to pick people from different departments to go and experience the product, as they call it, they want to get the biggest bang for their buck, don't they? And the person that's most likely to apply that experience and produce the bottom line sales, increase the bottom line of sales, that's the person they're going to pick, isn't it? But when you're in a call center environment, the majority of people, or that were in at that time, didn't have business minds. Like, that's a business approach, isn't it? But they're not. They're just there. They're 9 to 5. We weren't 9 to 5, but let's say they're 9 to 5. They want to earn money. They want to get as many perks as they want. And why isn't it them? You know, you've only been here 5 months. I've been here 7 months. I've hit target. Why? You know, I don't know. But management have decided that they will. You know, so it puts you in a very awkward position. And with something like, I think this was the beginning. It was actually the beginning of my downfall at Royal Caribbean.
Really?
Yeah, my. In fact, everything that I think I've ever experienced in life that's been negative has actually been because I've been doing so well, and just at the time being too young and too naive to realise that this is signs of success is when people start to get funny with you, you know?
Were you the only, or you just person pre 6 months to get to go on a cruise?
No.
Okay.
Anyway, so we flew to, where did we fly to? Palma.
You say we, how many were in the group?
There was probably about 8 of us.
Okay. Did you know them?
One of them was in the same department as me. Then you had a few people from customer service, a few people from customer relations. So I didn't know everyone, but yeah, I didn't know everyone. But so off we went. We flew. So we got the coach picked us up from the office in Weybridge. We went to Heathrow. Flew to Palma. Got the coach to the port, and it was all very nerve wracking because, you know, I didn't know these people, and I was going to spend 4 days with them, and you have to buddy up with someone else in a room, and I was just like, yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking.
Well, did you get to buddy up with the person that you knew?
Well, actually, thinking about it, there was 2 people from our department, and it was the girl that worked in our department I did buddy up with, and then we actually had our manager next to us in a interconnecting room with another girl from the quality assurance team. So there was like 4 of us quite close together in an inside cabin, which petrified me before I went in because I'm claustrophobic, and I thought, how am I going to deal with it? I thought, you're going to have to just get on with it. But I didn't know how I would deal with it. I mean, I don't like going in lifts or underground trains or anything like that.
What cruise was this out of Palma?
It was Grandeur of the Seas. So as we were driving towards the port, I saw this huge ship and was like, I was so excited. And we kept driving. And then as we got around the corner, there was looked like a little one. And they went, oh, there she is. And I thought, no, we're going on that little one. And it looked little in comparison. It was actually Liberty of the Seas that I could see, and it looked, you know, huge. And then Grandeur of the Seas, the baby one behind it.
Around the corner. I remember that anecdote in the Joy of Cruising. I kind of chuckled.
I actually preferred Grandeur of the Seas because it doesn't have the Royal Promenade. You have the atrium, and the atrium is so spectacular. You know, you walk in and it's, I mean, I don't know, like 12 decks high. I'm guessing. I can't remember now, but it's you've got these glass lifts. You've got this beautiful atrium. It's all shiny brass or chrome or whatever, marble floor. It feels, you know, you've got the music playing, and it's just a different vibe to walking on the promenade. Completely different. It just feels I'm going to say more sophisticated. It just, has that kind of feel about it, and which to me makes you feel a bit more, whereas the Royal Promenade is more like, come on party. This atrium is very like serene in a way. I loved it. And it looked huge. I mean, once you were on board, it didn't feel. The only difference was that you didn't get as lost as you did on the bigger ships. I didn't feel, the pool areas and stuff were smaller, but for me, because I hadn't actually been on a cruise, only on a cruise ship tour, I just saw everything and thought it was just incredible.
So, but it was the second ship that you walked onto. So how did it feel, especially knowing that you were going to stay on?
It was just a feeling like, it's almost like thinking, it was a feeling that I've never had before, but it was like I felt that I'd found my home. I don't know. It was just a connect. I can't really explain it. It sounds crazy, but there's no actual word in the English dictionary that describes that feeling, because it combines freedom. You're one with nature, so to speak, because you're going out into sea. It's a kind of a spiritual feeling at the same time. The wonders of the world. It's the adventure. And also the letting go of all the stuff that's going on in your life is back on shore.
That first cruise, what were your impressions? What was it like to sail away for the very first time?
So as you're pulling away from that, can't do any, if there's stuff going on, I mean, it certainly was like that back then because Wi-Fi wasn't really a thing, but as you pull away, you are literally separating yourself from all the stress, all the responsibilities, everything. It was just incredible. Absolutely. And my favourite things in life are music, sunshine, drinks and food. I mean, it's paradise, isn't it, being on a cruise ship? Sun was shining, and I lost myself. I was giddy, with euphoria about this whole experience of how incredible it was.
So when you got back to the office, so talk about after you got returned to the call center.
Well, so what we had to do is that it was part of the agreement that if you do one of these, you have to do a presentation to the rest of the office about what happened. So we all did a presentation, and then it must have been almost at the same time. I got this promotion to go into direct sales. So they used to call it PCS, Personal Cruise Specialist. And then you were answering the phone to people rather than travel agents. So that was a big responsibility. They said, we feel that for me, they felt I had a really good rapport with people on the phone, and that it would be such a benefit for me to speak to the customer directly, because building a rapport with the travel agent was great, but not probably as profitable as building it directly with the customer. So they wanted me on the phone to the customer, and I was petrified. I thought, oh my goodness, I was really, really scared. And the department had a very different dynamic. It was great. I mean, I loved it. I loved the department. I loved the people in there. It was much more salesy, and much more. It seemed to have a lot more testosterone flying around, and bit of healthy competition between sales numbers and stuff like that with the guys. It felt like more of a family, actually. Give them a personal service and do things like we could ask if we could discount it. We could ask if we could put onboard credit on. Now it's just plain and simple, whatever the computer says. Something like 2013, possibly around that time. It was when Joshua was born. I'd left by then, and it was a very sad time. It was such a family there in the UK, such a family. Everyone adored the actual cruises. We had a great rapport with people. You don't get paid very well in the travel business, but you get your perks, and we all live for cruising. And it was just such a great community. And when I wasn't there when they announced that they were closing down the call centre, but it was heartbroken. People were heartbroken. There was a lot of tears.
Why did you leave Royal?
Well, basically the reason I left was because I felt like I could earn more money working for myself as a travel agent, because obviously the call centre was very confined, and that was a real struggle for me, because the way it was supposed to be, it was supposed to only have 7 minutes on a phone call. Everything is monitored, so people your manager can see, and even people in other higher departments can actually monitor your call. They can listen into your calls at any time, or they could then. I mean, it might be very different now. They could listen into your calls. All your calls are recorded anyway. But you had to wrap it up they used to call it wrap it up in 7 minutes, within 7 minutes you had to have, the name, the address, the email address, the phone number, the details of the cruise. You had to ask for the booking, get it held on an option, all these things within 7 minutes, which is pretty blooming hard. And I just thought, it was just intense. And so I'd look at the numbers. I mean, we were doing our targets per month, they fluctuated. Obviously, January, the targets were about 300,000 per person, that's the value of cruises you had to book for the month. And I thought, if I was a travel agent getting 10%, that's £30,000, right? Now, if I only do 1%, that's still more than I'm earning here per month. So I'd be working from home, and I'd be able to spend as long as I like on the calls with people, and I could do all the other cruise, and all this sort of started going around in my head. So I looked into it, and I found a company who would take me on, let's say, and let me have a franchise. Again, another opportunity that came up because they knew that my numbers were really good at Royal Caribbean. They sort of said, as I said, I can't afford to buy a franchise for £12,000. So they said, well, because I said, I'm ready to get started. I want a business and I want to do this from home. And they said, well, we'll let you start, pay us the money as you go. And I was like, yes, I've got a business. So I left Royal Caribbean.
So had you started your blog?
No, I had absolutely no intention of starting a blog. No intention, no knowledge of blogs or anything.
So when and what motivated you to create Ships and Champagne?
There was a lot to learn with Go Cruise because it was all the other cruise lines. I mean, I knew so much about Royal Caribbean, Celebrity and Azamara, but when you look at P&O and Princess, it's a whole nother ball game. Different terminology, different categories, the way they price things. It was just completely different. So really, I suppose I spent the first few months learning about these new products. Coming out of Christmas, beginning of January, I was pregnant. Happy Christmas. So that was great, but the relationship wasn't. So I said, enough is enough. Found myself on my own with a business and no money because the other salary that was helping to support me with my new business had gone. So I wasn't sure what to do, really. And I thought, you've got to do something. So I had no money to market the business. And I don't know where I got the idea from, or I think maybe someone might have said something. It was probably in a training somewhere or other. Somebody mentioned doing a blog and putting everything on there. So I thought, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So I'm going to because I'd done so many ship visits. I mean, that was what was great with this company that I was with at the time. I did all these ship visits, been on so many different ships with different companies. So I had all the pictures and I thought, yeah, I'll just upload it and put it on a website. So I called this website, I bought flaviagray.com and did this sort of website without really thinking much about it. And yeah, just used that really as a reference for people to look and see what my experience was, and then just carried on really with the travel agency stuff. Well, as much as I could under the circumstances, because obviously I was preparing to have a baby.
What about Ships and Champagne?
It was conversation with my brother, actually, who his girlfriend had a friend who was a big influencer at the time, and influencing was new, really. He said, nobody's going to look up Flavia Gray because they don't know who you are. You can't call the blog Flavia Gray. And I said, really? He said, yeah, it needs a name like that describes what it is. So we were in the car driving down the A3, I'll never forget it, and we were just throwing up these different names, and I just said Ships and Champagne, and we both went, that's the one. That is the one. It perfectly described exactly what was on the tin. Because I love, at the time as well, I used to love going out for these sort of special meals that you could go at places like the Dorchester and all these posh restaurants for a set price. So I like going to nice places. And I thought, well, if I do Ships and Champagne, I can include that luxury element of life that I enjoy as well, the lifestyle side of it. And obviously Ships, covers all the cruise things. So that's how I changed the name. And then that changes the whole mindset as well. And I just thought, you know what, I love doing this more than I like doing the actual bookings. I thought with Ships and Champagne, it had a much more definitive route at that point. There were ways that you could monetize websites and stuff like that. So I thought this is I really, really enjoy this. And then of course, what really sort of pushed me into leaving the travel agency side of things completely was after meeting John Honeywell, Captain Greybeard, who was a legend in the cruise, or is a legend in the cruise industry, especially in media. He was very complimentary about my writing, and he did help me, because the thing is, when you're good at something, it sounds really pompous, but when you are good at something, you don't necessarily realise. You think everyone else has the same ability. You don't know that unless someone actually says to you, look, when I've compared this to other people's, yours is very good, then you realise, oh, okay. But people don't know they're good unless someone tells them that has an authority to do that. I didn't know. I didn't know that at all. So he was saying, your writing is really good. And I thought, well, I do love doing it. Then we were on Independence of the Seas, actually, Joshua and I. I was sort of toying with the idea of leaving as a travel agent and just becoming full-time Ships and Champagne blogger, writer, whatever. And then I had the news that John Honeywell passed away. So it was at that point I just thought, I'm going to do this. Things like that. There's so poignant moments. It was just the fact that I was on that ship when I heard, and now they've got the telescope with his famous saying. What was it? It was just, almost, well, things happen and just blow your mind all the time.
Yeah, that the process of interviewing you for the Joy of Cruising turned me on to John Honeywell. UK cruisers will know who that is, but for the listeners, he was a legendary journalist. UK. His inscription, that famous inscription, what's known as the epigraph, the very first sentence of my first cruising book. Then, by the third book, I met Dave Monk, who I'm sure you have heard of.
Yeah, they were very, very close, those two.
Yes. And so I mentioned that friendship in Dave Monk's piece, and that inscription opened up Dave Monk's chapter. So, I feel like I know a little bit about Captain Graybeard, John Honeywell, but you started it. You turned me on to him, and then, I subsequently learned more about how significant he was to the cruising community in UK.
Oh yeah, no, that's lovely that he underpins a lot of people in the cruise industry. So that was really a defining moment then, and I went into Ships and Champagne blindly but enthusiastically, and I did that for quite a few years.
Over the years, give us some highlights of your cruises. I know your cruising kind of came to a temporary end, so I'll ask you about your that last cruise. But what were some of the cruises that really stood out?
So for me, it's all about the ship. A lot of people say, like, when I've booked cruises in the past, people say, where are you going? Sometimes I will literally say, I don't even know. I don't know what ports they are. I don't know. It's all about the ship, especially because I'm a single parent. So it's about the kids' clubs and the ship. So I did a familiarisation cruise on the Ruby Princess from Southampton to Liverpool. Princess cruise ships, I just think, are gorgeous. To me, they are really fairy. Like, you literally feel like a princess when you're on them. I mean, that is just such a great description for them. I love the atriums, or they call them the piazza? I forget all the terminology. Piazza, something they call it. And the food is incredible on Princess. And yeah, I just love the way the whole ship is set out. I love the restaurant. I love the food. I love, like I say, the piazza, the international cafe, and all of that sort of stuff. Just love it. And they also, but they did have a collaboration with the Discovery Channel. So the kids' clubs are very much, there was a lot of stuff around wildlife and nature and all that sort of thing. So it was they were learning as they were playing. So there wasn't like a highlight place, but just being out there on the deck, watching, I think, film. We watched movies under the stars. We watched, I think it was Star Wars or something like that. Just absolutely incredible. Popcorn and movies and wrapped up in blankets, cruising around the British Isles. I just loved it. I loved that so much, that one. Very few times when you have these sort of trips are you allowed to take children. So I took him. He was it was actually his second cruise. He was 6 months old, and people kept saying, oh, is it his first cruise? I went, no, it's his second cruise. They couldn't believe it. 6 months old, 2 cruises in already, because obviously they can't cruise until they're 6 months old. By the time before he was 7 months old, he'd already done 2 cruises. So, but we had a bridge visit. I mean, I love the bridge visits. Just love it, So that was great. It's got some amazing pictures of Joshua with the captain.
I hear that's pretty hard to do, is go to the bridge.
Yeah, it is. I think as a passenger, unless you've got a loyalty, if you're part of the top tier loyalty. But when you're on a travel agent visit or a fam cruise or something to do with the company you're with, if you're already with the company, it does tend to be part of that thing, part of the event, if you like. So that was fantastic. So that was very memorable. There was the one the Grandeur of the Seas, obviously that was my first cruise. That was memorable for so many reasons.
So you have, or you took on a new travel career. What was your last cruise?
Actually, my last cruise was Independence of the Seas with the Godmother. Yeah, that was.
Oh, okay. With Elizabeth. Okay.
I believe that was it. That was the Fjord. So that was 2018. So it's a long time ago, Paul.
So tell us about this new travel career.
I've always had a passion for flying as well. Any type of travel. And if anybody who's read the book will understand my sort of entry into the world of travel was flying club class British Airways to LA and staying in Beverly Hills, which I thought that was the baseline of travel. But, you learn over the years. We had the pandemic, which I think made people see life very, very differently. And I'd always wanted to be cabin crew for British Airways. It was just a dream of mine since the age of 5. Since I took that first flight, I might have even been 4. And I've still got my Junior Jet Club book that I used to take on board and get signed. And it says a DC-10 from Heathrow to LA. And anyway, we used to go in the cockpit and visit then in those days. So I heard on the news it was the beginning of 2022. They said, British Airways are cancelling tens of thousands of flights due to staff shortages. And a little voice in my head said, well, they might be desperate for staff then, or for crew then, because I thought being 50, like the old days, they would never have even looked at employing someone at the age of 50. I thought maybe they're desperate. If it might just be my chance here to get in and be cabin crew. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm still a single parent, but I'll figure it out. Like, just apply and see if you get it. I thought, there's no way I'm going to get this job. Well, long story short, I did get the job. And I flew with British Airways for just over a year. But I did love it. I mean, my first flight was to LA, and my heart is there very much because that's where my dad, who's not with us anymore, took us on our first flight. And I actually sat in the flight deck for landing in LA, and I was beside I was thinking, don't get emotional, but it was very, very emotional for me. It was a real emotional moment, just landing into LA for the first time since I used to fly, with my dad as a kid on a British Airways flight as crew. Another defining, amazing, incredible moment. So I did some, did some LAs and did a Miami, and where else did I go? Went all over the place. I did go to America a lot, New York, Houston. I didn't manage to get to New Orleans, places like that. But yeah, no, I did. I really enjoyed it.
You're back to cruising. Tell us about the book. You wrote the book called
The A to Z of Cruise Terminology. And all the way through my sort of cruising journey, first of all, I didn't have a clue what people were talking about. There's so many things like that they would talk about, and I'd say, I don't know what they mean. Even things like white night. I was like, what's white night? It's where everyone wears white. Well, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't have a clue that was a thing. And customers would even say to me, is there a white night on board? And I'm thinking, I don't know. What's a white night? So things like that, and it just stops you looking stupid if the customer's asking you a question, you've got no idea. And then there was lots of things like, obviously port and starboard is something that seasoned cruisers know, but when you start off, you're like, how do you know? How do you know which one's which, and what does it mean? What side should I be on? Blah, blah, blah. You've got the dining, the different types of dining, early sitting, late sitting. Then you've got different, staterooms. What people used to think a stateroom. Some people have thought a stateroom means it's a suite because it's a stateroom. It sounds like it's more than a cabin, but no, it is just a cabin. And as an inside, has it got a window? Well, yeah, if it's on a promenade or if it's on Central Park, it's got a window. So much to literally navigate that I just thought, wouldn't it be good? When I actually started my cruise franchise, they give you like the Berlitz Guide to Cruising, where you have all the descriptions of the cruise ships, but you don't have the cruise terminology in there. And the cruise ships change. So that manual is going to constantly need to be updated, but the terminology doesn't change. I thought if I could just find something, I could just look up a word, and then get some more information on it. I mean, of course, we use Google and stuff like that. wouldn't it be nice to have a little companion, like you can. So this is, I mean, obviously the viewers can't see it, but that's it. I wanted to do it like they used to have the old A to Z map. Before we had a sat nav, we used to get the A to Z out. And that's kind of how I wanted it. So people could just have a little look and think, either if they booked a cruise or they're looking at booking a cruise, have a little look and see what's what, things about the galley, what is, some people know what galley, some people don't.
So tell our listeners how they can get a book.
It's on Amazon. So I've self-published it, which was a huge learning curve. I did it all myself. So they can go to Amazon, just type in the A to Z of cruise terminology, and it is available on Kindle and paperback. And it's available in the US and the UK and also in Europe. It's available in sort of all the countries that Amazon would let me make it available in. Also, but I have got on my social media, I've got a link in my bio which has links specifically to the US and the UK paperback and Kindle, because they're the sort of most frequently asked ones. Sometimes people can't navigate Amazon so well. So
the book, the publication of the book, which is kind of going on now, coincided with the rebirth of Ships in Champagne.
Correct.
Say some more.
So, I mean, that's the thing. It all seems to have, although things have kind of, it just all falls into place. Don't ask me how. It seems to be a journey and all the timings seem to happen right. So I wrote the book, which I've been dying to do for years. I had the time to write the book. And then it was time to, revive Ships and Champagne, but not. Now, the problem, I believe, in the past, a lot of it has been with the website. I mean, websites are a lot of work, aren't they? There's a lot involved in a website. There's a lot of costs involved in a website and maintenance and what have you. And really, I just didn't see the value in having a website at the moment, at least. So I've just revamped my social media to be Ships and Champagne. So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at the moment. Because again, with YouTube, it takes a lot to do it properly. It does take a lot of time and investment. The best way I found to communicate with people is via these social media channels. So I'm doing videos and posts and stuff on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
So tell our listeners how to follow you on social media.
Well, I would say the best way to do it is obviously join the Joy of Cruising Facebook group, and they can find me via that. But if you're not in the Joy of Cruising Facebook group, which you should...
Now, let me just say, the check is in the mail.
There you go. I mean, that's the easiest way, isn't it? I'm in the group, so you can find me there and then link from there. But I am on TikTok. It's ships _and _champagne. That's on TikTok and Instagram. But you can also go to shipsandchampagne.com, and that will redirect to a hub of information, which will, give you the access to the book or whatever. Because the other thing I'm doing as well, Paul, is I'm doing being like a cruise consultant, if you like. So rather than being a travel agent, because I haven't actually got the time to spend hours a day doing cruise quotes, because I do have to focus on my son, I'm doing cruise consultancy. So what that means is people can come to me for a paid consultancy, but I do actually have a travel agency as well. So if they want to book with me following the consultancy, they can, and obviously they get that turn, they get the fee off of the price of the cruise, so to speak. So I'm offering that as a very limited service, because family obviously have to come first, but I want to still continue in the travel industry and go to the events and do all the wonderful things that come with it, and do some more cruising myself, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So here's the $64,000 question, or the 64,000 pound question.
Thank you.
You just said do some more cruising. When are you cruising? Are you booked on anything?
No, so I'm not booked at the moment. But because what we're doing is we're sorting out my son's sort of educational plan at the moment, because he was in school, now he's not in school. And so I think he's going to remain being homeschooled, which actually means I can pursue another dream of mine, which is to do something called ship school. So I don't want to homeschool, I want to ship school. And I feel that I can actually give him an education on cruises. I want to plan sort of a lot of cruising. And as you can do these things quite cheaply if you're going out of school, during school term as well. You can do all sorts of things. and just try and educate him from a ship being our base. That is what I would like to do moving forward. But as far as this year is concerned, I'm looking at 2 cruises that I can't decide over. The one I've always wanted to do a transatlantic cruise, like yourself. And the Oasis of the Seas is in Barcelona this year, and we'll be going back to Fort Lauderdale in October. I would absolutely love to do that, be on that cruise, and that's because, like we said before, I mean, the price for Joshua and I to go on that cruise is less than it would cost us to fly there and back. The only trouble is we do have to fly back, so there is that cost as well. But then once you've turned up in Fort Lauderdale after your 14-day cruise, do you think I could just fly back from Florida? No. I mean, I love Florida, so that's then you have to start looking at car hire and hotels, and obviously come and see you. And I've got friends in Tampa and St. Pete Beach, and I'd want to take Joshua to Orlando. So then it becomes quite an expensive, cheap cruise. So we're just going to sort of see how things pan out. I've got a lot going on at the moment, promoting the book and getting Joshua's schooling right and everything, and then we'll just see what happens. The other one is Anthem of the Seas, so I'd like to do. If I don't do Oasis, I'll do Anthem, Southampton down to the Med.
Now I know you've done Anthem before, because I remember some photos in my book were from Anthem. Has Josh done Anthem?
No, he hasn't. No.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Flavia, it has been great reconnecting.
Oh, no, it's just incredible.
But we're not going to let you go yet. Before we let you go,
absolutely,
a couple of fun cruise questions, and then what I call a fun oddball question.
Okay.
The first question's easy, just for me to steal some ideas. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
Right. So my favorite cruise drink is actually very specific. The Kendall Jackson Chardonnay Reserve, because I first had that on board Allure of the Seas when we did a Christmas cruise, and I said to our waiter, "What is that wine? It's incredible!" And it's just amazing. So that you can buy it. It's about, I think you can get it in America for about $15 a bottle, I think. But it's beautiful. So that's actually specifically my drink. But I do also love a margarita.
Okay. How about food?
I mean, this is. I don't think there is any. I don't think I could specifically say with anything, because I love all of the food on board. I just couldn't pick one thing. I love the buffets. I love the fact that you can just go and have a little bit of everything.
Do you have a cruise food tradition? In other words, something you only eat on a cruise?
I've got something I avoid on a cruise. I avoid carbs if I can, but I don't avoid sugar. So I say to myself, right, you can have as much meat, vegetables, sauce, and all of that. I try and avoid the bread, the potatoes, all of the sort of empty calorie stuff, and then I save it for a whopping great chocolate dessert with all sorts of stuff on it. So that's kind of what I do. So what's yours?
For me, the only thing it's the only thing I eat on a cruise and nowhere else, and that's escargot.
It was my favourite, but it ruined a Ralph Lauren dress, so I've never touched it since. I put my fork in. I had this. It was on Grandeur of the Seas. I bought this beautiful Ralph Lauren dress. It's the one I'm wearing in the picture in the book, actually, when it's like a ruffled, cream ruffled dress. That was before the escargot, and I've got the gin and tonic in one hand. I went in and I put my fork in, and the garlic butter just squirted out and went on my dress.
Oh, the picture you have in my book. I remember that photo. Yep.
Yeah. And that was the one and only time I wore it, because the escargot ruined it. So I've kind of a bit of a love-hate relationship with that. But they are delicious.
Next question. What's your most memorable, funniest, or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Well, my most memorable is going to have to be having dinner on Independence of the Seas with Captain Eve and Elizabeth, the godmother, and her daughter. My mum, my son was there, and her daughter was a singer, an opera singer, and she actually sang at the table in the restaurant.
She's actually quite renowned.
What, her daughter?
Yes,
Her name has slipped my mind. I'm punching myself for it now. Anyway, so she stood up and sang this beautiful piece. We're in Chops Grill, Captain's there, the godmother's there, and she's singing, and it was just absolutely, it was just a moment, you know, it was just absolutely fantastic. The sun was setting, it was just fantastic. So that's a moment I can't forget.
Okay, the oddball question. First of all, let me just say welcome to the Flavia and Chips and Champagne fans and friends listening. We certainly hope you'll come back, check out future episodes. So Flavia, share one thing that my listeners and your friends and fans don't know about Flavia.
Actually, it's quite hard because I wear my heart on my sleeve. There's not a lot of people don't know about me, but an interesting fact might be a bit of trivia that I actually appeared in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, the Johnny Depp one, because people say, "What, the original?" I'm like, no, I'm not that old. I had a walk-on part on in the movie. So that's my little claim to fame. If you see the movie, it's the part when Charlie's walking down the street and there's some money blows down the street. He picks it up, goes into the shop and that's when he gets the winning bar of chocolate. Well, as he goes up the steps to the sweet shop, I'm coming out of the door. So I kind of pass Charlie. I'm coming out as he's going in, and that's me. So that's an interesting fact.
You don't happen to have a photo, do you?
No, the only thing you could do is get a still of it, but because it's such a. I've tried to get a shot of the movie, you know, a screenshot of it. But it's not very clear. I could try. I'll see what I can do.
Well, Flavia, thank you for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. So good to see you again, and maybe we'll get to see you again when we come to Southampton next year. All the best to you, and I'm so glad that you're coming back home.
Oh, thank you.
All the best to you and your rekindled career. Best wishes with the book. I hope we have some listeners who help you out with that. As I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.